The massive council chamber fell silent as the holographic display showed the wreckage floating in space. Twisted metal and debris were all that remained of the Zephyrian pirate fleet. 12 ships had attacked a single human merchant vessel, called the Dancing Bear. Now those 12 ships were nothing but scattered pieces drifting in the void. Admiral Kathvar of the Altarian Navy stared at the tactical data with his 4 eyes wide. His blue-scaled hands trembled slightly as he reviewed the combat footage. The human ship had seemed defenseless at first. It carried no visible weapons and showed up on scanners as a simple cargo hauler. But when the pirates demanded surrender, everything changed. The Dancing Bear had turned to face the attacking fleet. In the span of 30 seconds, it fired weapons that no scanner had detected. Each shot found its target with perfect accuracy. The pirate ships exploded one after another like fireworks in the darkness. When it was over, the human ship continued on its route as if nothing had happened. "How is this possible?" asked Senator Vashti, her insect-like head clicking nervously. The representative from the Veltar hive wore the traditional robes of her people, but her usual calm was gone. "Our intelligence reports showed that ship as unarmed." Ambassador Chen Wei sat quietly at the human delegation table. The elderly man with gray hair and calm eyes had served as Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for 10 years. He had seen this conversation many times before. Other species always reacted the same way when they witnessed human military capability. "The ship was a merchant vessel," Chen said in his soft voice. "Captain Rodriguez was simply defending his cargo and crew. Any human ship has the right to protect itself." General Thokmar of the Bruthan Empire slammed his massive fist on the table. The 7-foot-tall warrior's tusks gleamed as he spoke. Protecting itself? That was not defense. That was complete destruction. No merchant ship should have such power. Chen nodded politely. Captain Rodriguez showed remarkable restraint. He could have destroyed the pirate base on the nearby asteroid as well. Instead, he only eliminated the immediate threat and continued his delivery route. The chamber erupted in nervous chatter. Representatives from dozens of species spoke in worried tones. The humans had only joined galactic civilization 50 years ago, but stories like this happened regularly. Human merchant ships destroyed pirate fleets. Human exploration vessels fought off entire alien war parties. Human colony ships turned away invasion forces. Admiral Kathvar had studied every recorded human military action. The results were always the same. When threatened, humans responded with overwhelming force. They never started fights, but they always finished them. What worried him most was that these incidents involved civilian ships. If merchant vessels could do this much damage, what could actual human warships accomplish? "The Council must address this matter," declared Prime Minister Zolek of the Confederated Worlds. The tall, thin alien's green skin had turned pale with fear. "Humans represent a clear threat to galactic peace. Their military capabilities are beyond anything we have seen." Chen stood slowly and walked to the center of the chamber. His simple black suit made him look ordinary compared to the exotic aliens around him, but every eye in the room followed his movement. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the vast space. "My friends, Earth has no desire for conquest or expansion beyond our agreed territories. We seek only trade and peaceful cooperation with our galactic neighbors." Captain Rodriguez was transporting medical supplies to a colony world. The pirates who attacked him were preventing sick people from receiving treatment. "But the weapons," Senator Vashti insisted. "How did a cargo ship hide such powerful weapons from our sensors?" Chen smiled gently. "Human engineering focuses on efficiency and multi-purpose design. The Dancing Bear's mining lasers were simply reconfigured for defensive use. Any human engineer could make such modifications in a few hours." This statement caused even more alarm. If humans could turn mining equipment into ship-killing weapons so easily, what other surprises might they have? Admiral Kethnara pulled up technical reports on human civilian technology. Their cargo haulers were faster than most military ships. Their mining equipment could cut through the strongest armor. Their communication systems had ranges that exceeded military specifications. "Perhaps," suggested Elder Morden of the Ancient Circle, "we should consider restricting human expansion for the safety of all species." The chamber grew very quiet. Chen's expression did not change, but something shifted in the atmosphere. The human ambassador clasped his hands behind his back and looked around the room. When he spoke again, his voice remained calm and friendly. Earth respects the Council's authority in matters of galactic law. However, we must point out that humanity has never been the aggressor in any conflict. We respond to threats, but we do not create them. If other species wish to avoid unpleasant encounters with human vessels, they need only avoid attacking them. General Thokmar growled low in his throat. Are you threatening us, human? Not at all, Chen replied. I am simply stating fact. The Dancing Bear's crew sent 17 warning messages to the pirate fleet before opening fire. They provided multiple opportunities for peaceful resolution. When those opportunities were ignored, they protected themselves. Admiral Kathvar had reviewed those warning messages. The human captain had been polite but firm. He had explained that attacking his ship would result in defensive action. He had even offered to share his medical supplies with the pirates if they were in need. Only when the pirates opened fire did the humans respond. What troubles me, Admiral Kathvar said slowly, is not what we saw, but what we did not see. Where did those weapons come from? How did the ship move so quickly? Why did our most advanced sensors detect nothing unusual until the fighting began? Chen turned to face the Altarian admiral. Human technology develops along different paths than most species. We focus on adaptability and hidden potential. A human tool is designed to become a weapon when necessary. A human ship is built to become a fortress if threatened. The implications sent chills through the chamber. If every human civilian vessel was a potential warship, then the galaxy's military balance was not what anyone had believed. The humans controlled only a small region of space, but their merchant fleet traveled everywhere. Hundreds of these disguised weapons platforms moved through galactic trade routes every day. I propose we maintain peaceful relations with Earth, Senator Vashati said finally. Perhaps it would be wise to ensure that human shipping lanes remain clear and safe. Murmurs of agreement rose from around the chamber. No one wanted to face the kind of destruction that had befallen the Zephyrian pirates. If keeping humans happy meant protecting their trade routes, then that seemed like a small price to pay. Chen bowed politely to the assembly. Earth appreciates the Council's wisdom. We look forward to continued cooperation and mutual prosperity. As the session ended, Admiral Kathvar remained in his seat, studying the tactical data one more time. Something bothered him about the whole incident. The human response had been swift and decisive, but it had also been perfectly controlled. Not a single shot had missed its target. No excess force had been used. It was as if the Dancing Bear's crew had known exactly how much power was needed to destroy each pirate ship. That level of precision suggested extensive military training. But according to Earth's records, Captain Rodriguez was a civilian cargo hauler with no military background. If ordinary human merchants could fight with such skill, what were actual human soldiers capable of? Admiral Kathvar decided he did not want to find out. As he left the chamber, he made a mental note to ensure that Altarian ships gave human vessels plenty of space. The galaxy had learned to fear humans, and today had only reinforced that fear. Emperor Skothak of the Scar Hegemony stood before the massive tactical display in his war room. The holographic star map showed the eastern spiral arm of the galaxy, where his empire had ruled for over 10,000 years. Red markers indicated Scar territory, which stretched across hundreds of star systems. But a small cluster of blue markers near the edge of the map drew his attention. Human space. These upstart mammals have made the galaxy soft, the Emperor declared. His scaled hide gleamed under the chamber's harsh lights, and his yellow eyes burned with anger. 10,000 years of Scar dominance, and now every species cowers before a handful of hairless apes. General Vokhtar, commander of the Third Fleet, stepped forward. His battle scars told the story of countless victories across the galaxy. My Emperor, perhaps caution would be wise. The reports from other species suggest humans possess unusual military capabilities. Skothak's tail lashed in irritation. Reports and rumors. Stories told by weak species to justify their fear. The Scar have conquered civilizations that ruled the galaxy before these humans even discovered fire. We will show the galaxy that human power is nothing more than clever tricks and propaganda. The Emperor walked to his command throne, carved from the bones of his defeated enemies. For millennia, the Scar Hegemony had maintained order through strength. When species stepped out of line, Scar fleets reminded them of their place. The galaxy respected Scar power because they had seen what happened to those who challenged it. The human colony at New Geneva will serve as our example, Skothak announced. We will crush their defenses and occupy their world. When the galaxy sees humans kneeling before Scar warriors, this foolish fear will end. Admiral Zekthos, leader of the naval forces, consulted his tactical computer. New Geneva is defended by a small human fleet. Our intelligence suggests 12 ships, all civilian-class vessels converted for defense duties. They pose no threat to a proper Scar battle fleet. The Emperor smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Assemble the Third Armada. 3,000 ships should be sufficient to make our point. When we broadcast the conquest across the galaxy, every species will remember why they serve the Scar. Within hours, the largest fleet in Scar history began moving toward human space. 3,000 warships, each one a testament to Scar military might. The smallest vessels in the fleet were larger than most species' flagship battleships. The mighty dreadnoughts could crack planets with their main guns. News of the fleet's movement spread quickly through galactic intelligence networks. On dozens of worlds, governments held emergency sessions. The Altarians increased patrols along their borders. The Veltar hives went into defensive mode. Even the peaceful Crystalline Collective began evacuating their outer colonies. Ambassador Chen Wei received the news while reviewing trade agreements in his office on the diplomatic station. His assistant, a young woman named Sarah, burst through the door with panic in her eyes. "Sir, we just received word from Altarian intelligence. A massive Scar fleet is heading for New Geneva. 3,000 ships, Mr. Ambassador. This isn't a raid or a border skirmish. This is a full invasion." Chen set down his datapad and walked to the window. Stars glittered peacefully in the void, but he knew that peace was about to be shattered. He had hoped this day would never come, but human contingency plans existed for exactly this situation. "Sarah, please send a priority message to Earth Command. Use authorization code Omega-77. Tell them the situation and request immediate instructions." Sarah's hands shook as she typed the message. Every species in the galaxy knew what happened when major powers went to war. Entire star systems could be devastated. Billions of innocent lives hung in the balance. The reply from Earth came within minutes. Chen read it twice, then locked the message in his secure files. The words were simple but carried implications that would reshape the galaxy. Meanwhile, the Scar fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Geneva system. The human colony orbited a pleasant yellow star, with 3 million colonists living on a world they had terraformed from a barren rock. Farms and cities dotted the surface, connected by transport networks that gleamed in the sunlight. General Vokhtar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Bone Crusher. His sensors showed the defending human ships moving to intercept. 12 vessels against 3,000. The odds were so ridiculous that he almost felt sorry for the humans. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Let us offer them the chance to surrender." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the human flagship. A middle-aged woman in a simple uniform faced the camera. Her name was Captain Martinez, and her expression was calm despite the overwhelming odds. "I am General Vokhtar of the Scar Third Armada," he announced. "You are outnumbered by a factor of 250 to 1. Surrender your colony and your ships will be allowed to depart." Captain Martinez studied the tactical display beside her command chair. 3,000 enemy contacts filled her screen like a swarm of angry insects. Her own 12 ships looked tiny in comparison. "General Vokhtar, I am Captain Elena Martinez of the New Geneva Defense Force. This colony is under the protection of Earth. I must ask you to withdraw from this system immediately." Vokhtar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through his bridge. "Earth is thousands of light years away, human. You have 12 ships against my armada. Be reasonable. General, I have sent word to Earth about your arrival. I strongly advise you to reconsider your position." The Scar general cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. "Begin the attack. Destroy their ships quickly, then secure the planet." The Scar fleet moved forward like a metal tide, their weapons charged with deadly energy, ready to vaporize the pathetic human defense force. This would be the shortest battle in Scar history. The human ships spread out in a defensive formation, their small hulls dwarfed by the approaching armada. For a moment it looked like courage facing impossible odds. Then the first shots were fired. What happened next defied every tactical manual in the Scar military database. The human ships moved with impossible speed and precision. Their weapons struck targets across the entire Scar fleet simultaneously. Instead of 12 ships fighting 3,000, it seemed like 12 ships fighting 12, while the rest of the Scar fleet simply exploded. Within 2 hours, 90% of the Third Armada was debris. The survivors found themselves trapped by human ships that appeared and disappeared at will. General Vakhtar's flagship drifted powerless, its engines destroyed and its weapons offline. Captain Martinez's face appeared on his screen again. This time her expression was grim. "General, Earth Command has been notified of your attack on our colony. A response fleet is already on its way. I suggest you use whatever time you have left to make peace with your gods." Vakhtar stared at the tactical display in horror. His mighty armada, the pride of the Scar Empire, had been crushed by 12 human ships. But the captain's words filled him with even greater dread. If these defenders were so powerful, what would an actual human military fleet be capable of? Across the galaxy, deep space sensors detected massive energy signatures moving from the direction of Earth. Whatever was coming registered power levels that exceeded anything in the databases. Even the ancient monitoring stations of the first civilization began transmitting warning signals they had never broadcast before. In the Galactic Council chambers, Admiral Kathvar watched the sensor readings with growing horror. The energy signatures were moving faster than anything should be able to travel. They were heading directly for Scar space. What have they done? He whispered to himself. The galaxy was about to discover what humans were truly capable of when their civilians were threatened. Deep beneath the surface of Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, ancient machinery stirred to life for the first time in over a century. Commander Sarah Reyes opened her eyes as the cryogenic chamber released her from its frozen embrace. Steam hissed from the pod as she sat up, her enhanced muscles adjusting to movement after decades of sleep. The facility around her hummed with activity as dozens of similar chambers opened throughout the complex. Men and women emerged from their long slumber, each one representing the pinnacle of human evolution and military science. These were the Supreme Warriors, Earth's ultimate guardians, and they had been awakened because the unthinkable had happened. "Status report," Sarah commanded as she stepped from her pod. Her voice carried absolute authority despite having been silent for so long. At 6 feet tall, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to glow with inner light, she was both beautiful and terrifying. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb, her second in command, was already reviewing tactical data on a holographic display. His cybernetic implants glowed softly under his dark skin as information flowed directly into his enhanced brain. "Commander, we have a Code Omega situation. The Scar hegemony attacked the New Geneva colony with a fleet of 3,000 ships. The local defense force eliminated 90% of the attackers. But Earth Command has activated the extinction protocol." Sarah's expression did not change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. The extinction protocol had only been authorized 3 times in human history, and never against a galactic power. It meant that a species had crossed the line from threat to existential enemy. "Civilian casualties?" she asked. "None. Captain Martinez and her people protected the colony perfectly, but the attack itself triggered automatic responses. The hegemony struck at civilians with overwhelming force. According to our mandate, that requires complete neutralization. Around them, other Supreme Warriors prepared for deployment. These were not ordinary soldiers enhanced with standard military augmentations. Each warrior represented decades of genetic manipulation, cybernetic integration, and training that broke the limits of human possibility. They moved with fluid grace that seemed to defy physics, and their eyes held the cold fire of barely contained power. Major Diana Chen, the unit's tactical specialist, approached with additional intelligence. Her Asian features were unmarked by age despite her 90 years of life, a benefit of the genetic modifications that made her superhuman. "Commander, we have confirmation that this was a deliberate action by Emperor Skothak himself. Intelligence suggests he viewed human, military capability as propaganda and decided to demonstrate Scar superiority to the galaxy." Sarah walked to the central command platform where a massive holographic display showed the current tactical situation. The Scar Empire controlled hundreds of star systems, with a total population in the trillions. Their military included over 50,000 warships and armies that had conquered entire civilizations. "How many Supreme Warriors are available for this operation?" Sarah asked. 217 active units across all divisions," Marcus replied. "The Alpha Division has 63 warriors ready for immediate deployment. Beta and Gamma divisions can be mobilized within 24 hours. Sarah nodded slowly. 200 warriors against an empire of trillions. To any outside observer, the odds would seem impossible. But the Supreme Warriors had been created for exactly these impossible situations. We proceed with Alpha Division only. This is a demonstration, not an extermination. The galaxy needs to understand the consequences of threatening human civilians. But we will not commit genocide unless absolutely necessary. She turned to address the assembled warriors. 63 men and women stood at attention, each one capable of single-handedly destroying most military units. Their armor was black as space itself, designed to integrate with their enhanced biology. Weapons that could reshape matter at the atomic level hung at their sides. Warriors of the Alpha Division, we have been awakened because an alien empire chose to attack our people. 3 million human civilians on New Geneva were targeted for conquest and possible extermination. This aggression cannot be allowed to stand. The warriors listened in perfect silence. They had trained for this moment for decades before entering cryogenic sleep. Every possible scenario had been analyzed and practiced until their responses became instinctive. Our mission is clear. We will proceed to scar space and neutralize their military capability. We will capture their leadership and force their complete surrender. We will demonstrate to the galaxy that attacking human civilians brings consequences beyond their imagination. Sarah activated her personal display, showing the tactical plan that had been developed in the seconds since their awakening. The Supreme Warriors' enhanced minds could process information and develop strategies at superhuman speed. The Scar military is concentrated in 3 main fleet bases and their homeworld capital. We will strike all 4 locations simultaneously. Marcus, take 15 warriors and neutralize the first fleet at Scar Prime. Diana, take 20 warriors to the second fleet base at Vaktar Station. I will lead the remaining warriors against the third fleet and the Emperor's palace. As they spoke, their ships powered up in hidden bays throughout the solar system. These vessels were unlike anything in the galactic databases. They existed partially outside normal spacetime, powered by technologies that most species would consider impossible. When fully activated, each ship could phase through matter, bend gravity, and manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. Remember, Sarah continued, we are not conquerors, we are protectors. Every action we take must serve the purpose of defending human life and ensuring this never happens again. The galaxy will judge us by what we do in the coming hours. The warriors dispersed to their ships with mechanical precision. Within minutes, the first vessels began emerging from their hiding places. To outside observers, they seemed to simply appear in space, phasing into existence like ghosts becoming solid. Across the galaxy, deep space monitoring stations detected the energy signatures and immediately sent emergency alerts to every government. The readings were beyond anything in their experience. Whatever the humans had hidden was now revealing itself, and the power levels suggested technology that bordered on the supernatural. On the diplomatic station, Ambassador Chen Wei received a priority message from Earth Command. The text was brief, but carried implications that would reshape galactic civilization. Mr. Ambassador, please inform the Galactic Council that Earth's Supreme Warriors have been activated. We recommend that all species maintain safe distances from Scar space for the next 48 hours. Earth regrets any inconvenience this may cause to galactic commerce. Chen read the message twice, then sealed it in his secure files. He had hoped never to see those words. The Supreme Warriors were humanity's final argument, the ultimate guarantee that their species would never face extinction. Now the galaxy would witness what humans were truly capable of when their civilians were threatened. Admiral Kathvar was in his private quarters when the emergency alert reached him. The Altarian military's most sensitive sensors had detected gravitational anomalies throughout human space. Ships were moving that registered energy output equivalent to small stars. He immediately called an emergency session of the council, but he suspected it was already too late. Whatever the humans were unleashing, it was beyond anything the galaxy had prepared for. The Scar Empire had awakened something that should have remained sleeping. As the Supreme Warriors' ships moved toward their targets, reality itself seemed to bend around them. Space twisted and folded, allowing them to cross vast distances in mere hours. Their destination was the heart of the Scar Empire, where an emperor who had ruled for centuries was about to learn that some enemies should never be challenged. The galaxy held its breath as humanity's true guardians went to war. Emperor Skothak paced in his throne room on the Scar homeworld, waiting for news from General Vaktar's fleet. The attack on New Geneva should have been completed hours ago, but communication with the Armada had been lost shortly after the battle began. His advisors assured him this was normal during combat operations, but something felt wrong. The massive doors to the throne room burst open, and Admiral Zekthos rushed inside. The naval commander's scales had turned pale with terror, and his hands shook as he activated a holographic display. "My Emperor, we have received a transmission from the Third Armada. General Kathvar is dead, and 90% of our fleet has been destroyed." Skothak stopped pacing and stared at the display. The grainy recording showed the aftermath of the battle at New Geneva. Twisted wreckage floated where proud Scar warships had once sailed. The few surviving vessels drifted powerless and broken. "This is impossible," the Emperor snarled. 3,000 ships against 12 human defenders. How could our forces fail so completely? Admiral Zekthos activated another display showing sensor readings from the battle. The human ships moved faster than our computers could track. Their weapons penetrated our shields as if they did not exist. Our survivors report that the humans seemed to phase in and out of reality itself. Before Skothak could respond, every alarm in the palace began sounding. The deep, resonating tones indicated imminent attack on the capital world itself. Guard Captain Morthak rushed into the throne room with panic in his yellow eyes. "My Emperor, massive energy signatures have appeared throughout our space. Unknown vessels are approaching the First Fleet Base, the Second Fleet Headquarters, and our orbital defense platforms." Skothak moved to the command center adjacent to his throne room. The tactical displays showed contacts moving toward Scar military installations across 3 star systems. The energy readings from these ships exceeded anything in the Imperial database. "How many vessels?" the Emperor demanded. "We cannot determine exact numbers, my Emperor. The ships appear to exist partially outside normal space. Our sensors detect them as gravitational distortions rather than solid objects." On the main display, one of the mysterious ships materialized near the First Fleet Base at Scar Prime. The human vessel was sleek and black, its hull seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. As they watched, the ship simply passed through the base's defensive shields as if they were not there. The First Fleet's commanding admiral tried to coordinate a response, but his ships moved like they were frozen in time compared to the human vessel. Weapons fire that should have destroyed the intruder passed harmlessly through empty space. The human ship was never where the targeting computers predicted it would be. Within minutes, every weapon system on the base went offline. The human ship had somehow disabled the entire installation without firing a shot. Then it began transmitting on all frequencies. "This is Commander Marcus Webb of the Earth's Supreme Warriors. Your military installation has been neutralized. All personnel will evacuate immediately or face termination." Emperor Skothak watched in horror as his mighty First Fleet, the pride of the Scar military, powered down their weapons and began abandoning their ships. A single human vessel had neutralized an entire battle fleet without destroying a single ship. "How is this possible?" Admiral Zekthos whispered. The answer came as reports flooded in from across Scar space. At Kathvar Station, home of the Second Fleet, 20 human ships had materialized simultaneously. They moved through the defensive formations like ghosts, disabling weapons and engines with surgical precision. The station's crew found their life support systems shut down, forcing them to surrender or suffocate. But the most shocking report came from the Imperial Palace's own sensors. A single human ship had appeared in orbit directly above them. It hung motionless in space, making no aggressive moves, but its mere presence sent waves of terror through the palace guard. "My Emperor," Guard Captain Morthak reported, "the ship is scanning our facilities. Every defensive system we activate is immediately disabled. Our weapons cannot achieve target lock." Skothak stared at the tactical display showing the human vessel above his palace. For 10,000 years, no enemy had dared approach the Scar homeworld. The orbital defense platforms that protected the planet could destroy entire fleets. Yet this single ship hung in space as if those defenses did not exist. A new transmission began broadcasting across the palace communication system. The voice was calm and controlled, but carried absolute authority. "Emperor Skothak of the Scar hegemony, this is Commander Sarah Reyes of the Earth's Supreme Warriors. You ordered an unprovoked attack on human civilians. Your military forces have been neutralized. You will surrender unconditionally, or face escalation to methods that will make our current demonstration seem gentle." The Emperor's scaled hands gripped his throne as he processed the implications. His entire military had been defeated in less than 6 hours. 3 separate fleets spread across multiple star systems, had been neutralized simultaneously by fewer than 70 human ships. "Open a channel," Skothak commanded. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the human ship. Commander Sarah Reyes stood before the camera, wearing armor that seemed to drink in the light around it. Her silver hair and glowing eyes made her look like a goddess of war from ancient mythology. "I am Emperor Skothak, ruler of the Scar hegemony," he began, trying to project the authority that had conquered hundreds of worlds. "You have attacked sovereign Scar territory without provocation." Commander Reyes studied him with eyes that seemed to see through his soul. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute power. "Emperor, your forces attacked the human colony at New Geneva with 3,000 warships. You targeted civilian populations for conquest and possible extermination. Under Earth's defensive protocols, this constitutes an act of genocide. The penalty is complete neutralization of your military capability and occupation of your government." Skothak felt his confidence crumbling. The human woman spoke as if she commanded the power of gods. Around him, his advisors cowered in terror as they realized the true scope of what they faced. "We can negotiate," the Emperor said desperately. "The attack on your colony was a misunderstanding. Compensation can be arranged." "Negotiation ended when you fired on human civilians," Commander Reyes replied. "You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. If you refuse, we will demonstrate capabilities that your species cannot survive." The transmission ended, leaving the throne room in stunned silence. Emperor Skothak, who had ruled an empire for over 3 centuries, found himself faced with a choice no Scar ruler had ever contemplated. Surrender completely to an alien species or face extinction. Admiral Zekthos reviewed the tactical reports one more time, hoping to find some option for resistance. But the truth was undeniable. The human ships operated with technology that seemed to violate the basic laws of physics. They could phase through matter, manipulate gravity, and disable any system they chose to target. "My Emperor," the Admiral said quietly, "we have no effective response to their capabilities. Our weapons cannot hit their ships. Our shields cannot stop their weapons. They have neutralized 3 entire fleets without suffering a single casualty." Around the galaxy, other species watched the unfolding destruction with growing terror. The Scar Empire, which had dominated the eastern spiral arm for millennia, was being dismantled by a handful of human ships. Emergency sessions convened on dozens of worlds as governments realized that everything they thought they knew about military power had just become obsolete. On the diplomatic station, Ambassador Chen Wei addressed an emergency session of the Galactic Council. The chamber was filled with representatives from species that had suddenly discovered they lived in a universe where humans possessed godlike military capabilities. "My friends," Chen said calmly, "Earth's supreme warriors are conducting a limited operation to neutralize the threat posed by Scar aggression. We have no territorial ambitions beyond our current holdings. Once the Scar military has been neutralized and their leadership secured, normal galactic commerce can resume." Admiral Kathvar stared at the tactical displays showing human ships throughout Scar space. "Mr. Ambassador, how many of these supreme warriors exist?" Chen paused before answering, choosing his words carefully. "Admiral, what you are witnessing represents a small fraction of Earth's defensive capabilities. We sincerely hope that no other species will require a larger demonstration." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. If this was only a small demonstration, what was humanity truly capable of? The galaxy had feared human military power based on encounters with their merchant ships and colonial defense forces. Now they realized those fears had been woefully inadequate. Emperor Skothak sat alone on his throne, watching the countdown timer on his display. 53 minutes remained until the human deadline expired. Around him, his empire crumbled as reports of surrender came from across Scar space. His generals, admirals, and governors were abandoning their posts rather than face the wrath of Earth's supreme warriors. For the first time in his long life, the Emperor of the Scar understood what it meant to be truly powerless. Emperor Skothak stood in the ruins of his pride as the final minutes of the human deadline counted down. His advisors had fled the palace, his fleets had surrendered, and his empire lay broken. With 30 seconds remaining, he activated the general communication system and spoke the words that would echo through galactic history. "This is Emperor Skothak of the Scar hegemony. I hereby surrender unconditionally to the forces of Earth. All SCAR military units are ordered to cease resistance and comply with human commands. The transmission went out across hundreds of worlds, formally ending an empire that had lasted 10,000 years. Within hours, Commander Sarah Reyes and her team materialized directly in the throne room, their phasing technology allowing them to bypass every defensive system in the palace. Skothak had expected to face monsters after witnessing the destruction of his fleets. Instead, he found himself confronting humans who looked almost ordinary despite their incredible power. Commander Reyes was tall and graceful, with silver hair and eyes that held depths of knowledge he could not fathom. "Emperor Skothak," she said in perfect SCAR language, "you are now a prisoner of Earth Command. Your empire is under temporary human administration until a suitable government can be established." The former emperor bowed his head in defeat. "What will become of my people?" "They followed my orders. The blame is mine alone." Commander Reyes studied him with those unsettling eyes. "Your people will be unharmed. Earth has no interest in ruling an empire. Once your military has been permanently dismantled and your government restructured, we will withdraw. The SCAR will be free to govern themselves within certain limitations." Within weeks, the news spread throughout the galaxy. The SCAR Empire had not just been defeated. It had been completely conquered in less than 24 hours. Human forces now occupied key positions throughout SCAR space, but they made no move to claim territory or resources. Instead, they began the systematic destruction of every major weapon system in the Empire. The message was clear to every species in the galaxy: attack human civilians and face complete annihilation of your military capability. But more importantly, the humans had shown restraint even in total victory. They could have exterminated the SCAR population, but chose mercy instead. On the diplomatic station, the Galactic Council convened for the most important session in its history. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to address the new reality of human military supremacy. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as delegates tried to process what they had witnessed. Ambassador Chen Wei stood at the center of the room, his calm demeanor unchanged, despite commanding the most powerful military force in galactic history. When he spoke, every being in the chamber listened with absolute attention. "My friends, Earth wishes to address certain misconceptions that may have arisen from recent events. The Supreme Warriors are not conquerors or tyrants. They are guardians, awakened only when human civilians face existential threats. Now that the SCAR situation has been resolved, they will return to their hidden bases and resume their long watch." Senator Vashati of the Veltar spoke first, her insect voice trembling slightly. "Mr. Ambassador, the galaxy has witnessed capabilities beyond our understanding. How long have these Supreme Warriors existed?" Chen clasped his hands behind his back, a gesture that had become familiar to the Council. "The Supreme Warriors were created during humanity's early expansion into space. We learned through bitter experience that the universe contains species willing to commit genocide for resources or territory. The warriors ensure that humanity will never face extinction again." Admiral Kathvar leaned forward in his seat. "How many Supreme Warriors exist?" "What we witnessed destroyed the largest empire in the galaxy using less than 70 ships. The human ambassador paused, choosing his words carefully. "Admiral, I am authorized to tell you that the recent operation involved approximately 3% of Earth's available Supreme Warriors. Beyond that, the numbers remain classified for obvious security reasons." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. 3%? If such a tiny fraction of their force could conquer the SCAR Empire, what could their full strength accomplish? Some delegates began calculating the implications and found themselves facing numbers that defied comprehension. General Thokmar of the Bruthan Empire rose to his feet, his massive frame trembling with barely controlled fear. "Are you saying that Earth could conquer the entire galaxy if it chose to do so?" Chen turned to face the Bruthan general directly. "General, Earth has absolutely no desire to conquer anyone. We are traders and explorers, not empire builders. The Supreme Warriors exist solely to protect human life and ensure our species' survival. They have no other purpose." "But the capability exists," Admiral Kathvar pressed. "The capability exists," Chen confirmed. "Just as every species in this chamber possesses the capability to make war on their neighbors. The question is not what we can do, but what we choose to do. Earth chooses peace, trade, and cooperation with all species willing to reciprocate." Over the following months, the galaxy settled into a new equilibrium. Trade routes shifted to favor human space, not out of coercion, but from the simple desire to remain on humanity's good side. Species that had been planning expansion into human territory quietly abandoned those plans. The phrase human space became synonymous with absolutely forbidden territory in most galactic languages. Pirate attacks on human vessels ceased entirely. No species wanted to risk awakening the Supreme Warriors again. In the former Scar territories, human administrators worked with local populations to establish democratic governments. The massive weapons factories that had supplied the Empire's war machine were converted to civilian manufacturing. Planets that had suffered under Scar rule began to prosper, as their resources were directed toward peaceful development rather than military conquest. Commander Sarah Reyes stood on the observation deck of her ship as it prepared to return to its hidden base. The galaxy spread out before her, filled with countless civilizations that now knew the true cost of threatening human civilians. She felt no pride in the destruction her forces had wrought, only satisfaction that the mission had been completed successfully. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb joined her at the viewport. "The last Scar weapons platforms have been neutralized, Commander. All Supreme Warrior units are ready to return to standby status." Sarah nodded slowly. "How long until the next activation, do you think?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "Based on galactic behavior patterns and the demonstration we just provided, I estimate at least 500 years before any species considers threatening human civilians again." "Maybe longer." "Good," Sarah replied. "The longer we sleep, the better. Our purpose is to prevent wars, not fight them." On a neutral space station near the border between human and Altarian space, Admiral Kathvar met with General Martinez for an informal discussion. The Altarian had requested the meeting to better understand human military doctrine. "General," Admiral Kathvar began, "my government wishes to ensure we never accidentally provoke a hostile response from Earth. Can you provide guidance on human military protocols?" General Martinez, a career officer who had witnessed the Supreme Warrior's deployment, smiled grimly. "Admiral, the rules are very simple. Treat human civilians with respect, honor our territorial boundaries, and conduct trade according to established agreements. As long as you do those things, you will never see our military forces. But if we violate those principles, then you would face the same response as the Scar Empire. The Supreme Warriors do not negotiate compromise or show mercy to those who threaten human civilians. They exist to ensure that humanity survives no matter the cost to our enemies." Admiral Kathvar absorbed this information carefully. "How many Supreme Warriors exist, General?" "The ambassador said the Scar operation used only 3% of your available forces." General Martinez looked out at the stars through the station's viewport. "Admiral, what you witnessed was indeed a small fraction of our capability. But I will tell you something that might provide comfort. The Supreme Warriors are not interested in conquest or expansion. They sleep in hidden bases throughout human space, waiting for threats that we hope will never come. And if multiple species attacked human colonies simultaneously, then the galaxy would discover capabilities that make the Scar demonstration look restrained," Martinez replied quietly. "But we sincerely hope that day never comes." Years passed, and the galaxy adapted to the new reality of human military supremacy. The Galactic Council established new protocols for interaction with human vessels. Shipping lanes through human space became the safest routes in the galaxy. The phrase "protected by Earth" became the ultimate security guarantee for any commercial venture. Ambassador Chen Wei retired from his position, satisfied that humanity had achieved the balance they sought. Feared for their military might but respected for their restraint, other species maintained peaceful relations not out of coercion, but from genuine understanding that humanity preferred cooperation to conquest. The Supreme Warriors returned to their hidden bases and resumed their eternal watch. They slept peacefully, knowing that the galaxy had learned the most important lesson in human military doctrine. The great city of Velkaran burned beneath a sky that had turned the color of blood. Ambassador Veltara pressed her six-fingered hand against the cool metal of the observation deck window and watched her world die. The Kathvar had ruled this planet for over 3,000 years. Their silver spires had reached toward the stars with pride and purpose. Now those same towers crumbled as the Zethmori bioships tore them apart like hungry animals. "Ambassador, we must leave now." General Kathvar said behind her. His voice carried the weight of defeat that had settled over their entire species in the past 6 months. The final evacuation ships are ready. If we wait any longer, we will join the consumed. Keltara turned away from the window. The evacuation center buzzed with desperate activity. Thousands of her people moved in orderly lines toward the transport ships, carrying only what they could hold in their arms. Children clutched toys while parents whispered empty promises that everything would be fine. The elderly moved slowly, their eyes filled with the pain of leaving behind a lifetime of memories. How many systems have we lost now? Keltara asked, though she already knew the answer. 11 of our 12 worlds are gone, Kathvar replied. His military uniform, once pristine and decorated with honors from a dozen victories, now bore the dust and grime of endless retreats. Keth Prime will fall within hours. The swarm grows stronger with each world they consume. The Zethmori were unlike any enemy the galaxy had ever faced. They did not want territory or resources in the way other species understood. They wanted life itself. Every living creature they captured became part of their collective consciousness, transformed into another drone to serve the swarm. Entire civilizations had been converted, their knowledge and memories absorbed into the hive mind that guided the endless hunger. Keltara walked through the evacuation center, stopping to speak with families as they waited their turn to board the ships. She had been their voice to the galaxy for 15 years, representing the Kathvar in trade negotiations and diplomatic ceremonies. Now she could offer them nothing but empty words of comfort. "Where will we go, Ambassador?" asked an old female, holding the hand of a small child who looked up with wide, frightened eyes. "To safety," Keltara lied smoothly. "We have allies. They will help us." But even as she spoke the words, she knew they were false. For the past 4 months, she had sent desperate messages across the galaxy, calling on every treaty, every friendship, every debt owed to the Kathvar people. The responses had been the same from every corner of civilized space. The Altarian fleet, masters of space warfare who had once called the Kathvar their greatest allies, had sent a formal message expressing their deep regret, but explaining that they were repositioning their forces to protect core territories. The message had been signed by Admiral Zarthul, the same officer who had shared victory celebrations with Kathvar commanders just 2 years before. The Zanari Collective, whose advanced technology had been freely shared by Kathvar scientists, claimed they were conducting strategic analyses of the situation. Their quantum computers, capable of processing millions of calculations per second, apparently needed more time to determine if helping was worthwhile. Even the Horim Syndicate, traders who had grown wealthy through centuries of Kathvar partnership, had closed their borders. Market conditions, they claimed, made any military assistance economically unfeasible. The Galactic Council itself, that grand assembly of civilized worlds, had debated the Kathvar crisis for weeks. They formed committees, issued statements of concern, and ultimately voted to send humanitarian observers to monitor the situation. No ships, no weapons, no hope. "The last ship is ready, Ambassador," a young officer reported. "Captain Velamora requests your presence on the bridge." Keltara nodded and made her way through the corridors of the evacuation vessel. The ship hummed with the controlled chaos of a desperate retreat. Families huddled together in cargo bays that had been hastily converted to living spaces. Medical officers moved between the wounded, doing what they could with limited supplies. Captain Velamora stood at the command console, her expression grim as she watched tactical displays showing the approaching Zethmori swarm. The bioships moved like a living wave across space, their organic hulls pulsing with unnatural light. "How long do we have?" Keltara asked. 6 hours before they reach orbital range, Velamora replied. "Maybe 8 if we are fortunate. The defense platforms will buy us some time, but not much." Through the bridge windows, they could see the planet's surface dotted with fires. Automated defense systems fired desperately at the descending bioships, their energy beams cutting bright lines through the red sky. It was like watching someone try to stop a flood with their bare hands. "Set course for the neutral zone," Keltara ordered. "We will join the other refugee fleets there." "And then?" Velamora asked the question everyone was thinking. Keltara had no answer. The neutral zone was a stretch of empty space between the major galactic powers, claimed by no one and defended by nothing. It had become the final gathering place for what remained of the Kathvar people. Dozens of ships drifted there, filled with refugees who had nowhere else to go. As their ship pulled away from Keth Prime, Veltara watched her homeworld shrink in the view screen. She thought of the libraries full of ancient knowledge, the museums holding artifacts from their earliest days among the stars, the gardens where her grandmother had taught her to tend the sacred flowers that bloomed only in Kathvar soil. All of it would be gone by morning, consumed by creatures that saw beauty only as another form of energy to be absorbed. The communications officer looked up from her station. "Ambassador, we are receiving final transmissions from the surface defense centers. They are requesting permission to activate the planetary destruction protocol." The bridge fell silent. The planetary destruction protocol was a final measure, designed to deny the Zethmori their prize by destroying everything they sought to consume. It would turn Keth Prime into a dead rock, but it would prevent the swarm from growing stronger. "Granted," Veltara said quietly. Tell them they served with honor." She closed her eyes as the message was sent. Behind her lids she could see the faces of the millions who had called Keth Prime home, the soldiers who even now prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice, the children who would never see their world again. When she opened her eyes, she was looking at stars. Cold, distant points of light that had watched civilizations rise and fall for billions of years. Somewhere among those stars were the species that had turned their backs on the Kathvar. Somewhere were the politicians who had voted to let an entire people die rather than risk their own comfort. "Open a channel," she ordered. "All frequencies. Emergency transmission." The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Ambassador." Veltara stood straight, drawing on the dignity that had made her voice respected in 1,000 diplomatic meetings. She spoke not as a politician or negotiator, but as the last free representative of her dying people. "This is Ambassador Veltara of the Kathvar Empire, broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. Our worlds burn. Our people flee. We called to you for help and you turned away. Remember this when the swarm comes for you, as it surely will. Remember that you chose politics over principle, safety over solidarity. Remember that you let the Kathvar die alone." She paused, looking out at the stars that offered no answer. "And remember that we believed you were better than this." The transmission ended. Behind them, Keth Prime became a brief new star as the defense centers carried out their final order. The Kethnara homeworld was gone, but its people lived on in the ships that carried them toward an uncertain future. In the depths of space, the message spread across subspace relays reaching every corner of the galaxy. Most who heard it filed it away with the other tragedies of war, uncomfortable but easily forgotten. But on a small blue planet in an unremarkable star system, someone was listening. Captain Sarah Chen sat in the command chair of the human starship Defiance, her coffee growing cold as she listened to the alien transmission for the third time. The bridge around her was quiet except for the soft hum of life support systems and the occasional beep from monitoring stations. Her crew of 42 humans and 6 alien civilians watched the tactical display showing the location of the Kathvar refugee fleet. "Play it again." "Martinez," she ordered. Communications Officer Luis Martinez nodded and activated the recording. Ambassador Veltara's voice filled the bridge again, speaking words that had haunted Sarah's thoughts for the past 18 hours. The pain in the alien woman's voice was unmistakable, even filtered through the universal translator. "Distance to the Kathvar fleet?" Sarah asked. 4 days at maximum jump speed," replied Lieutenant Commander Jessica Park from the navigation station. "But Captain, we have no authorization for this. Earth Command specifically ordered all human vessels to avoid the conflict zone." Sarah stood and walked to the main view screen, which showed the stars ahead of them. Somewhere in that darkness, an entire civilization was dying while the galaxy watched and did nothing. She thought about the message they had intercepted, about Ambassador Veltara's words asking if anyone was better than the cowards who had abandoned her people. "What's our cargo manifest?" she asked. Chief Engineer Tom Bradley consulted his tablet. "Medical supplies, food rations, and construction materials bound for the mining colony on Kepler 442b. Nothing urgent, and nothing they can't wait another month to receive." Sarah turned to face her bridge crew. These men and women had served with her for 3 years, through exploration missions and first contact protocols. They had followed her orders without question, through asteroid fields and diplomatic crises. Now she was about to ask them to risk their careers and possibly their lives for strangers. "You all heard the transmission," she said. "The Kathvar Empire is being wiped out by something called the Zethmori Swarm. Every major galactic power has abandoned them. Millions of refugees are floating in space with nowhere to go. Captain, Park said carefully, I understand the situation is terrible, but Earth Command was clear. Humanity is not yet a member of the Galactic Council. We're supposed to avoid getting involved in galactic conflicts. Since when do we need permission to help people in trouble? Asked Martinez. His family had fled Earth's resource wars when he was a child, saved by UN refugee ships that had operated without official authorization. Sarah looked around the bridge. She could see the conflict in their faces. They were military officers, trained to follow orders and maintain discipline. But they were also human beings who had just heard the desperate plea of a dying civilization. I'm going to be honest with you, Sarah said. If we do this, Earth Command will probably court-martial me. They might court-martial all of us. Our careers will be over. But right now there are millions of people out there who are about to be eaten alive by monsters, and no one in the galaxy cares enough to help them. She paused, thinking about her daughter back on Earth. Jenny was 8 years old and always asked her mother to tell stories about the brave explorers who had first reached the stars. What story would Sarah have to tell if she turned away now? I'm setting course for the Kathvar refugee fleet, she announced. Anyone who wants to file an objection can do so officially. Anyone who wants to transfer to another ship when we reach the next starbase can do so with my recommendation. But I'm not going to let an entire species die because politicians are afraid of making waves. The bridge was quiet for a long moment. Then Martinez spoke up. Navigation, set course for the refugee fleet. Best possible speed. Medical, prepare to receive casualties, added Dr. Elena Vasquez from her station. Lots of them, probably. Engineering, prep the cargo bays for refugee housing, said Bradley. We're about to get very crowded. One by one, every officer on the bridge confirmed their readiness to follow Sarah's lead. She felt a surge of pride that almost brought tears to her eyes. This was why she had joined the Earth Space Service, not to file reports and follow regulations, but to represent the best of what humanity could be. The Defiance changed course, its engines pushing the ship toward a rendezvous with tragedy. For 4 days they traveled through hyperspace, while Sarah composed and deleted a dozen messages to Earth Command explaining her actions. In the end, she decided that actions would speak louder than words. They dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the neutral zone and immediately saw the scope of the disaster. Dozens of alien ships drifted in formation, their hull designs unlike anything in the Earth databases. Some were military vessels scarred by battle damage. Others were clearly civilian craft, overcrowded transport ships and converted cargo haulers. Incoming transmission, Martinez reported. It's from the lead ship. They're asking us to identify ourselves. Open channel, Sarah ordered. She activated the view screen and found herself looking at Ambassador Veltara. The alien woman had 6 arms, blue-tinged skin and large eyes that showed exhaustion and despair. She wore formal robes that had once been elegant but now looked worn and travel-stained. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earthship Defiance, Sarah said. We received your transmission, Ambassador. We're here to help. Veltara's expression changed from suspicion to confusion. Earth? I am not familiar with your species. Are you allied with one of the Council races? No, ma'am. We're humans. We're not members of the Galactic Council, and we're not allied with anyone. We just heard that you needed help. The alien ambassador's eyes widened. You came all this way for strangers? Why would you do such a thing? Sarah smiled, remembering her daughter's bedtime stories, because it's the right thing to do. For a moment, Veltara said nothing. Then she leaned forward in her chair, studying Sarah's face as if trying to understand something impossible. Captain Chen, do you understand what you are facing? The Zethmori are not like other enemies. They consume everything they touch. They turn living beings into extensions of their collective consciousness. Entire star fleets have been destroyed trying to stop them. We understand the risks, Sarah replied. What we don't understand is how the galaxy can just watch while you're being destroyed. Veltara's expression hardened. Politics, Captain. Ancient alliances and economic interests. The Council races calculate that it is cheaper to let us die than to risk their own forces against the swarm. Sarah felt anger building in her chest. She had studied the galactic powers during her diplomatic training, learning about species that claimed to be more advanced and civilized than humanity. Now she was seeing what their civilization really meant. Well, they're not the only ones with ships, she said. Permission to come aboard, Ambassador? I think we need to talk about what one human ship can do against impossible odds. An hour later, Sarah walked through the corridors of the Kathvar command ship. The alien vessel was beautiful in its own way, with curved walls and soft lighting that created a peaceful atmosphere. But she could see the signs of overcrowding everywhere. Families camped in storage areas, medical bays overflowing with wounded, children playing quietly in corners because there was no safe place to run and shout. Ambassador Veltara led her to a conference room where several other Kathvar leaders waited. General Kethran looked like a professional soldier, tired but still alert. Captain Velmora had the weathered appearance of someone who had spent her life in space. Others introduced themselves as scientists, medical officers, and civilian leaders. Captain Chen, Veltara began, "We are grateful for your offer of assistance, but I must ask you to be realistic. You have one ship. The Zethmori swarm numbers in the thousands. Even if your technology is advanced, you cannot hope to defeat them in battle." Sarah spread a portable hologram display on the table, showing the tactical situation. Red markers indicated known Zethmori positions, slowly advancing toward the refugee fleet's location. "You're right," she said. "One ship can't win a war, but one ship can buy you time, and time might be enough to change the situation." She pointed to the display. "The swarm is following a predictable pattern. They consume everything in a system before moving to the next one. That gives us maybe 2 weeks before they reach this position." "2 weeks to do what?" asked General Kethran. "We have sent messages to every government in the galaxy." "No one will help us. No government will help you," Sarah corrected. "But governments aren't the only ones who can make a difference. There are independent traders, mercenary groups, even pirates who might be willing to fight for the right cause. And there are other species who have been dismissed by the Council, just like humanity." She looked around the table at their skeptical faces. "Ambassador, you broadcast a message asking if anyone was better than the cowards who abandoned you. Well, we heard you, and I guarantee we're not the only ones who did." Dr. Vasquez, who had accompanied Sarah to the meeting, spoke up. "We also brought medical supplies and food. Our ship isn't big, but we can help with the immediate crisis while we figure out a longer-term solution." Veltara studied Sarah's face again. "Captain, why should we believe that your species is different from all the others who have disappointed us?" Sarah thought about her answer carefully. The human ship Valiant dropped out of hyperspace with a flash of blue light, followed by 11 more Earth vessels in perfect formation. Captain Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the Defiance as Admiral Marcus Torres appeared on the main screen, his weathered face showing both determination and barely controlled anger. "Captain Chen," Torres said without preamble, "Earth Command is furious. They want your head on a platter and probably mine too for what I'm about to do." "Understood, Admiral. Are you here to arrest me?" Torres smiled grimly. "Not exactly. Officially, the Third Fleet is conducting training exercises in this sector. Unofficially, we received some interesting intelligence about a new alien threat that might pose a danger to Earth colonies." Sarah felt relief wash over her. She had known Torres for 10 years, and the man had never met a fight he wouldn't take if he believed it was right. "What changed Command's mind?" "Your message did," Torres replied. "The one where you described the Zethmori and what they do to their victims. The brass realized that if this swarm keeps growing, it will eventually reach human space. Better to stop it here than fight it at Earth's doorstep." The truth was more complicated than Torres let on. Sarah's unofficial reports had caused a storm in Earth's government. Some officials wanted to court-martial her immediately. Others argued that humanity needed to prove itself worthy of galactic respect. In the end, it had been the testimonies of the few alien civilians living on Earth that tipped the scales. They had spoken of the Kathvar as honorable people who deserved better than extinction. "What's our situation?" Torres asked. "We've been working with the Kathvar for 10 days, Sarah reported. "They've established a defensive base on Kethnara, the last habitable world in their territory. 3 million refugees are on the surface, along with whatever military forces they have left." "And the swarm?" "Long-range sensors show them 2 days out. Maybe less." Sarah brought up the tactical display. "Admiral, there are thousands of bioships heading this way. Even with your fleet, we're outnumbered 50 to 1. Torres studied the display, his expression thoughtful. "Tell me about these bioships. What are we really facing?" Sarah activated a recording from the Kathvar archives, the view screen filled with images of the Zethmori vessels, organic constructs that looked more like giant insects than spacecraft. Their hulls pulsed with veins of bioluminescent fluid, and weapon ports opened like mouths along their sides. "They're alive," she explained. "Each ship is grown rather than built, and they're all connected to a central hive mind." The Kathvar scientists believed the original Zethmori were a peaceful species that got infected by some kind of space parasite millions of years ago. "Weaknesses?" Torres asked. "They're vulnerable to certain electromagnetic frequencies, but only briefly, and they adapt quickly to any attack pattern. The Kathvar Navy managed to destroy a few hundred ships before they figured out countermeasures." "Wonderful," Torres muttered. "Any good news?" Sarah smiled for the first time in days. "Actually, yes. We've been sharing human technology with the Kathvar, and they've been sharing theirs with us. Some interesting combinations have emerged." On Kethnara's surface, the integration of human and Kathvar technology was proceeding at an incredible pace. Human engineers worked alongside alien scientists in underground facilities, protected from orbital bombardment by layers of rock and energy shields. The cultural exchange was as remarkable as the technical one. Lieutenant Jake Morrison crouched next to Kathvar technician Velnath, both of them covered in grease as they installed a hybrid weapon system. The young human had volunteered for ground duty, claiming he was tired of sitting in space while people suffered on planets. "Your people are remarkable," Velnath said, her forearms working with practiced precision. "I have never seen such determination to help strangers." "Your people are pretty amazing too," Jake replied, adjusting a power coupling. "The way you've organized the refugees kept morale up after losing everything. Back on Earth, we'd probably have riots by now." Velnath's expression darkened. "We have had riots, Lieutenant. Despair is not unknown to the Kathvar. But we have also learned that survival requires cooperation." Above them, the combined human-Kathvar fleet took positions around the planet. Admiral Torres had initially been skeptical of alien technology, but the demonstration of Kathvar energy shields had changed his mind quickly. Their defensive systems were decades ahead of human designs. While human weapons offered raw power and versatility that impressed the alien engineers, Captain Velamora stood on the bridge of her wounded cruiser, now equipped with human torpedo tubes and targeting computers. She had been fighting the Zethmori for months, watching her beautiful ships torn apart by creatures that treated space warfare like a feeding frenzy. Now for the first time she felt hope. "Human vessel Defiance, this is Kathvar Command," she transmitted. "Your modifications are complete. All ships report ready for battle." Sarah acknowledged the transmission and turned to her tactical officer. "What's our readiness status?" "All weapons online," Lieutenant Park reported. "The new Kathvar shields are holding at 100%. Engineering reports the hybrid engines are running smoothly." "Good. Signal the fleet. All ships to battle stations." The preparations had taken 10 days of frantic work. Human and Kathvar crews had labored around the clock to integrate their technologies, sharing knowledge freely, despite having known each other for less than 2 weeks. The results were impressive. Human ships now carried Kathvar shield generators and sensor arrays, while alien vessels mounted human missile launchers and kinetic cannons. But it was the small innovations that might make the difference. Human creativity had always been chaotic and unpredictable, leading to solutions that more organized minds might never consider. Kathvar precision and scientific method had refined these ideas into practical weapon systems. The planet's surface bristled with defensive installations. Energy cannons designed to Kathvar specifications but powered by human fusion reactors. Missile batteries that fired rounds programmed with human chaos algorithms to confuse the swarm's collective intelligence. Underground bunkers where 3 million refugees waited and hoped. "Contact," came the call from the sensor station. "Bioships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system." The main view screen lit up with tactical displays as the Zethmori fleet materialized. Sarah had seen the recordings, but witnessing the swarm in person was overwhelming. Thousands of organic ships moved in perfect coordination, their bioluminescent hulls creating patterns of light that spoke of alien intelligence and hunger. "My God," someone whispered on the bridge. Admiral Torres's voice came over the communication system, addressing all ships in the combined fleet. "All vessels, this is Admiral Torres. Today we stand together with the Kathvar people against an enemy that threatens all life in the galaxy. The so-called advanced civilizations have abandoned our allies, but we will not. We will show the universe what courage looks like." He paused, and when he continued, his voice carried the weight of human history. "The Kathvar asked for help, and we answered. They offered us their friendship and we accepted. Now we fight not just for their survival, but for the principle that no people should face extinction alone. All ships advance to attack positions. Let's remind the galaxy what it means to stand by your friends. The human and Kathvar fleets moved forward in formation, a tiny force facing overwhelming odds. But they moved together, united by bonds forged in desperation and strengthened by mutual respect. On the surface of Kethnara, Lieutenant Morrison put down his tools and picked up his rifle. Around him, human soldiers and Kathvar defenders prepared for what might be their final battle. The young man thought of his sister back on Earth, who always said he was too stubborn to know when to quit. Velnath, he said to his alien partner, if we don't make it through this, I want you to know it's been an honor working with your people. The Kathvar technician touched his shoulder with one of her hands. Lieutenant, if we do not survive, at least we will die knowing that someone cared enough to stand with us. In space, the two fleets approached each other at a significant fraction of light speed. The Zeth-Mori swarm moved like a living thing, individual ships darting and weaving in patterns that seemed random but were actually precisely coordinated. The human Kathvar alliance maintained disciplined formations, their hybrid technologies creating sensor signatures the enemy had never encountered. Range to target, 4 million kilometers in closing, reported the tactical officer. Sarah looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. These people had followed her into the unknown, risking their careers and lives for aliens they had never met. In a few minutes, they would discover if human stubbornness and Kathvar honor were enough to stand against the hunger of the swarm. All weapons, prepare to fire, she ordered. Let's show them what happens when you threaten our friends. The battle for Kethnara was about to begin, and with it, humanity's introduction to galactic warfare would be written in fire and determination. The Zeth-Mori had consumed entire civilizations, but they had never faced an enemy that refused to abandon its allies no matter what the cost. The universe was about to learn that some bonds could not be broken, and some friends were worth dying for. The space around Kethnara erupted in violence as the two fleets collided. Streams of energy lanced between ships while missiles traced bright arcs across the darkness. The Zeth-Mori bioships moved like a school of predatory fish, flowing around the human Kathvar formations with deadly grace. Captain Sarah Chen gripped her command chair as the Defiance shuddered under enemy fire. The new Kathvar shields flared with blue light, absorbing energy blasts that would have crippled her ship a week ago. But she could see on the tactical display that the Allied fleet was being pushed back despite their technological advantages. Direct hit on the Endeavor, reported Lieutenant Park. She's lost main power. Kathvar is reporting heavy casualties, added Communications Officer Martinez. They're requesting emergency medical support. The battle had been raging for 6 hours and the pattern was becoming clear. The Zeth-Mori could replace their losses faster than the Allies could inflict them. Every destroyed bioship seemed to spawn 2 more from the larger hive vessels, while every damaged human or Kathvar ship represented irreplaceable personnel and technology. Admiral Torres appeared on the main screen, his uniform torn and a bandage covering a cut on his forehead. The bridge of his flagship, the Valiant, showed signs of battle damage. Sarah, we need to fall back to the second defensive line, he said grimly. We're losing ships faster than we can count. What about the evacuation? Sarah asked. Still in progress, but it's going to take another 12 hours to get everyone off the planet. The Zeth-Mori are already sending landing forces to the surface. On Kethnara, the battle had come to ground. Lieutenant Jake Morrison crouched in a defensive trench carved from alien rock, his rifle spitting energy bolts at the organic monstrosities advancing across the refugee camp's perimeter. The Zeth-Mori ground forces were even more horrifying than their ships, twisted amalgamations of different species all connected to the same hungry consciousness. Fall back to checkpoint 7, shouted Sergeant Williams, her voice barely audible over the sound of weapons fire and alien screams. Jake helped a wounded Kathvar soldier to his feet, supporting the aliens' weight as they retreated toward the next defensive line. Around them, human Marines and Kathvar defenders fought side by side, their different fighting styles somehow complementing each other perfectly. Lieutenant Morrison called Velnath from behind a makeshift barricade. The children's shelter needs escort to the evacuation site. Can you spare soldiers? Jake looked around at his depleted squad. They had started the day with 20 Marines. Now he counted 8 still on their feet, and 2 of those were walking wounded. "Take Corporal Davies and Private Chen," he ordered. "Get those kids to safety." "What about the defensive line?" Davies asked. "We'll hold it," Jake replied, though he wasn't sure how. The Zethmori kept coming in endless waves, and every fallen defender was one fewer gun between the monsters and the refugees. In the underground command bunker, Ambassador Veltara coordinated the evacuation with human efficiency officers. The process was a nightmare of logistics, trying to move 3 million frightened people through limited transport capacity, while a battle raged overhead. "The northern shelter has been compromised," reported a Kathvar aide. 2,000 refugees are trapped. "Send rescue teams," Veltara ordered, though she knew they had no teams to spare. "I'll go," said Lieutenant Commander Jessica Park, who had volunteered for ground duty when her ship had been crippled. "Give me 10 Marines and the best route." Veltara looked at the young human woman with wonder. Park had never met the refugees she was volunteering to save, yet she spoke as if their lives were more important than her own. "Commander, the area is overrun with Zethmori ground forces. It would be suicide." "Then we'd better move fast," Park replied, checking her weapon. "Those people didn't ask to be in this situation. They deserve someone willing to risk everything to get them out." The rescue mission launched within minutes. 10 human Marines and Park moving through the war-torn landscape toward the trapped refugees. They fought through 3 separate Zethmori positions, losing 2 Marines but refusing to retreat. When they reached the shelter, they found families huddled in the darkness, protecting their children from the sounds of battle above. "We're here to get you out," Park announced, her universal translator converting her words to the Kathvar language. "Follow us and stay low." The evacuation took 4 hours, with the humans forming a protective corridor around the refugees as they moved toward the transport ships. Zethmori creatures attacked repeatedly, but the Marines held their ground with stubborn determination that reminded Veltara of stories about human soldiers from their ancient wars. In space, the battle continued with desperate intensity. The Zethmori had broken through the outer defensive lines and were now attacking the planet directly. Admiral Torres watched in frustration as bioships landed on Kethnara's surface, disgorging thousands of the creatures that would convert every living being they touched. "We need more time," he told Sarah over the communication link. "The evacuation is only half complete." "Then we buy more time," Sarah replied. "All ships target the hive vessels. If we can disrupt their command structure, maybe we can slow down the ground assault." It was a desperate gamble. The hive vessels were the largest and most heavily defended ships in the Zethmori fleet, protected by swarms of smaller bioships. Attacking them directly would mean flying through a wall of enemy fire with little hope of survival. "Captain," said Dr. Vasquez from her station, "I'm reading massive energy buildups in the hive ships. Whatever they're doing, it's big." Sarah studied the sensor readings and felt her blood turn cold. The energy signatures matched theoretical models for planetary bombardment weapons, the kind that could sterilize entire continents in minutes. "They're preparing to glass the planet," she realized. "They'd rather destroy everything than let us evacuate the refugees." The realization spread through the fleet within moments. The Zethmori were abandoning their usual pattern of consumption and conversion. Instead, they would simply destroy Kethnara and everyone on it, denying the Allies their small victory. "All ships emergency attack pattern," Torres ordered. "We stop those hive vessels or everyone down there dies." The human and Kathvar fleets threw themselves at the enemy with suicidal courage, breaking formation to race toward the massive organic battleships. They flew through storms of enemy fire, their hybrid shields flaring and failing as they pushed deeper into the swarm. The Defiance shuddered as a bioship latched onto her hull, its acidic secretions eating through the armor plating. Sarah could hear emergency alarms throughout the ship as her crew fought to repel boarders that had broken through the hull. "Engine room to bridge," came Chief Bradley's voice. "We've got Zethmori creatures in engineering. They're trying to reach the reactor core." "Hold them off," Sarah ordered. "We need power for just a few more minutes." On the surface, Lieutenant Morrison watched the sky light up with explosions as the space battle reached its climax. He could see the running lights of human ships diving toward the massive hive vessels like tiny insects attacking giants. Some of the ships were already burning, their hulls torn open by enemy fire, but they kept flying. "They're all going to die up there," said one of his Marines. Yeah, Jake replied, but they're doing it so we can live. That's what friends do. He thought about his family on Earth, his girlfriend who had begged him not to volunteer for military service, his parents who worried every time he shipped out to some distant star. They would understand why he was here, fighting for people he had barely known 2 weeks ago. They would understand because they were human, and humans didn't abandon their friends. The first hive vessel exploded in a bloom of organic fire, its death scream echoing across subspace frequencies. The Valiant had rammed it at full speed, Admiral Torres choosing to sacrifice his ship and crew rather than let the weapon charge complete. Torres, Sarah called over the communication link but received only static in reply. The second hive vessel began firing its planetary bombardment weapon, a stream of energy that carved a molten scar across Kethnara's northern continent. But before it could complete its sweep, Captain Velmora's cruiser struck it amidships, the Kathvar commander making the same choice as her human counterpart. The battle continued for another hour, both sides taking terrible losses. When the shooting finally stopped, the space around Kethnara was filled with debris from dozens of ships. The Zethmori swarm had been bloodied but not broken, while the Allied fleet was reduced to a handful of damaged vessels. But they had bought the time they needed. The evacuation was complete. 3 million Kathvar refugees safely aboard transport ships that were already jumping to hyperspace. The planet below was scarred and burning, but its people lived. Sarah stood on the bridge of her battered ship and looked out at the stars. They had won, in the sense that they had saved the people they came to protect. But the cost had been enormous. Admiral Torres was gone, along with half the human fleet. Captain Velmora and most of the Kathvar Navy had died buying precious minutes for their people to escape. Captain, Martinez said quietly, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. 6 months after the Battle of Kethnara, the neutral zone had transformed from empty space into a bustling hub of activity. Dozens of space stations floated in formation, their docking bays busy with ships from species the Galactic Council had never bothered to acknowledge. The largest station, jointly built by human and Kathvar engineers, served as the headquarters for what was being called the Coalition of the Forgotten. Captain Sarah Chen walked through the station's central plaza, still amazed by what they had accomplished. The wide corridors bustled with beings from a dozen different worlds, all species that had been dismissed or ignored by the major galactic powers. Kathvar children played alongside human youngsters, their laughter echoing off walls decorated with artwork from both cultures. Captain Chen, called Ambassador Veltara, approaching with her characteristic grace. The Kathvar diplomat looked healthier than she had in months, the desperate exhaustion replaced by cautious optimism. The council session is about to begin. Are you ready? Sarah nodded, adjusting her new uniform. The coalition had its own military now, combining the best elements of human and alien tactical doctrine. The rank insignia on her collar marked her as a coalition admiral, a promotion that had come with responsibilities she was still learning to handle. They entered the council chamber together, a circular room with seating arranged to accommodate different alien physiologies. Representatives from 17 species took their places, each one carrying the hopes of people who had been abandoned by the galaxy's established powers. The session began with reports from the front lines. The Zethmori swarm was still advancing, having consumed 3 more star systems in the past month, but now they faced organized resistance for the first time. Coalition fleets using hybrid human Kathvar technology had successfully defended 4 different worlds that would otherwise have fallen. The key is coordination, explained Captain Velneth, now commanding a mixed-species crew aboard the cruiser Unity. The swarm expects each species to fight alone, using predictable tactics. When we combine our approaches, we confuse their collective intelligence. Sarah studied the tactical displays showing their recent victories. The pattern was clear. Whenever coalition forces worked together, sharing technology and tactics freely, they achieved results that surprised everyone, including themselves. What's the status of recruitment? She asked. Better than expected, replied General Morrison. Jake Morrison had survived the ground battle on Kethnara, earning a field promotion and the respect of soldiers from multiple species. The word is spreading. Species that have been ignored by the Council are reaching out to us. The Valdrani just sent a delegation, and the Hegemony Mining Collective wants to discuss providing resources. The transformation had been remarkable. What had started as a desperate alliance between humans and Kathvar had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a true coalition of equals, where species shared technology, resources, and decision-making without regard to military strength or economic power. There's been another development, Veltara announced. We've received a communication from the Galactic Council. They want to meet. A murmur ran through the chamber. The council had been strangely quiet since the Battle of Kethnara, watching as the coalition grew stronger and more organized. Their silence had been interpreted as either contemplation or preparation for some kind of response. What do they want? Asked Dr. Elena Vasquez, now serving as the coalition's chief medical officer and xenobiology specialist. They claimed to be interested in coordination of anti-swarm efforts. Veltara replied with obvious skepticism. They want to meet on neutral ground to discuss joint operations. Sarah felt a familiar anger building in her chest. The same politicians who had abandoned the Kathvar to extinction now wanted to coordinate with the forces that had actually done something about the threat. Let me guess, she said. They want us to follow their strategic plan and operate under their command structure. That would be the traditional approach, General Morrison agreed. The question is whether we're interested in being traditional. The debate that followed lasted 3 hours. Some coalition members argued for cooperation, pointing out that the galactic powers had vast resources that could make the difference against the Zethmori. Others insisted that any alliance with the Council would result in the coalition being absorbed or controlled by the same entities that had proven their cowardice. The fundamental issue, said Dr. Vasquez, is trust. How do we work with people who have already demonstrated that they'll abandon their allies when things get difficult? We don't, Sarah replied firmly. But we can work alongside them as equals. They want to coordinate? Fine. They can coordinate with us, not command us. The decision was made to accept the Council's request for a meeting, but on coalition terms. They would meet in the neutral zone, on the station that had become a symbol of what could be accomplished when species worked together instead of competing for dominance. 2 weeks later, Sarah found herself in the same council chamber, but now it held representatives from the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. Councillor Zarthul led the Altarian delegation, while the Zanari Collective had sent their top military strategists. Even the Horim Syndicate had arrived, their merchant princes suddenly interested in the coalition's success against the swarm. Councillor Zarthul, Sarah said without bothering with diplomatic pleasantries. Welcome to the neutral zone. I trust you're impressed by what the inferior species have accomplished. Zarthul had the grace to look uncomfortable. Admiral Chen, we acknowledge that the Council may have made strategic errors in our initial response to the Zethmori threat. We are here to discuss how we might work together going forward. Are you? Asked Ambassador Veltara, her voice carrying years of accumulated bitterness. Because the last time we asked for your help you were too busy with economic analyses to prevent genocide. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. The galactic powers sat on one side, radiating the authority they had wielded for centuries. The coalition representatives faced them, representing species that had been dismissed as primitive or irrelevant. Perhaps, said Councillor Veltara of the Zanari Collective, we could focus on our common enemy rather than past disagreements. Past disagreements? Sarah stood up, her human anger finally breaking through diplomatic restraint. You call the abandonment of an entire civilization a disagreement? You call letting millions of people die, rather than risk your precious fleets a strategic error? She gestured toward the viewport showing the bustling station outside. You want to know what we've built here? We've built something you apparently forgot how to create. An alliance based on mutual respect and shared sacrifice. Every species here has put their lives on the line for the others. Can you say the same? Zarthul's expression hardened. Admiral, you may have achieved some tactical victories, but the Zethmori threat requires resources and coordination on a galactic scale. Your coalition, while admirable, lacks the industrial capacity to defeat the swarm permanently. He's right, said General Morrison quietly. We're punching above our weight, but there are limits to what we can do with 17 species and a few dozen systems. Sarah looked around the room at the faces of her allies and enemies. The council representatives expected her to admit defeat, to acknowledge that the coalition needed their help desperately enough to accept subordination. They had come here expecting to dictate terms to grateful inferiors. "You're absolutely right, Counselor," she said finally. "The Coalition alone cannot defeat the Zethmori, but neither can the Council, as you've proven by losing a dozen systems while we've been saving them." She activated a holographic display showing the current tactical situation. Red markers indicated Zethmori positions, while blue and green showed Council and Coalition forces respectively. "Here's what I propose," she continued. "True coordination. Not the Council giving orders to lesser species, but genuine cooperation between equals. We share intelligence, technology, and tactical coordination, but each alliance maintains its own command structure and makes its own strategic decisions." "Unacceptable," Zarthul said immediately. "Military operations require unified command. The Council has the experience and authority to lead such efforts." "The Council has the experience of losing," replied Ambassador Veltara, "while the Coalition has the experience of winning." The meeting went on for hours, with neither side willing to compromise on the fundamental issue of authority. The Council representatives could not accept that the species they had dismissed as inferior might be their equals. The Coalition members could not trust leaders who had already abandoned them once. Finally, Councillor Velthara made a different suggestion. "Perhaps we could begin with limited cooperation, joint operations on a small scale, to build trust and test coordination protocols." Sarah considered this. It was not the recognition of equality she wanted, but it was a start, and in the meantime, the Coalition could continue to grow and prove itself. "Very well," she agreed. "Joint operations with shared command and equal authority. We'll see how committed you really are to stopping the swarm."